All right, everybody, welcome back to another Welcome to the J episode. I am your host, Jahenns Manigat. I have a very special guest with me today. Before we get into all that, though, make sure to like and subscribe to the Field of 68 Media Network so you can follow content such as this, me representing the Creighton Blue Jays, as I always do, different representatives representing their alma maters as well on that network. So make sure to like and subscribe and do all that good jazz. I appreciate you all for all of the support and the love that I've received so far. We are in season 3. This is guest number 11 stepping into the J with me this year. He is affectionately known in the Omaha area as the Godfather. He's a very big friend of the show. West Side stand up. Ross Ferrini's in the building. What up, Ross? How you doing, bro?
I'm good, man. I don't think anyone's really calling me the Godfather besides in like a joking way. But I did actually go to the West Side game last night. West Side played Gretna. I went and watched the old boys get busy. So yeah, proud West Side Creighton guy.
How did they do, by the way? Or did you not mention the score because they didn't do so well?
They lost, yeah. They
Yeah, that's what,
lost.
if I know anything about you, Ross, like
Yeah,
I know your
they lost.
mannerisms a little bit too well over the years of just hanging out, being boys and stuff. So as soon as I saw that you didn't mention the score, I'm like, yeah, West I probably lost, huh?
Yep, they lost. That's all right. Gretna's pretty good. But kind of, I think in the Metro, everyone's kind of chasing Bellevue West, whose point guard Josiah Dotzler is committed to Creighton.
Yep.
So
And he comes from a great lineage of Creighton basketball players with Josh being there beforehand. He
yep.
was number 12 before I was number 12. So you know I gotta have love for all my number
That's
12s
right.
against the
That's
Jays
right. I
for sure.
forgot.
Yeah.
Yeah. I forgot
Hey,
Josh was
look,
number
man.
12.
Once I committed, I did my history. I started looking up everything about the boys.
Has
So
there been any number 12s after you?
yes. Wow. But he transferred out and I'm blanking on his name and I know the fans are gonna kill me for him, but it was a JUCO kid who came in. He had braids, skinny guy, super athletic,
Oh,
but he was a
gosh,
one and
what was his
done.
name? Was it something Lee?
Maybe, but I mean, he was there for a cup of coffee and left. So obviously
Right.
that's why we don't remember. And then also my guy Jordan Scurry, how could I forget? He started with number 5. He hit me up like his junior year, was just like, hey man, like I kind of want to do a number switch. You mind if I take 12? I was like, bro, I don't have this is all you, bro. Like
Yeah,
you're my
man.
guy.
I
Obviously, take
wasn't
the
like an
number.
All-American. Like
Yeah,
my
yeah.
name's not hanging in the
My
rafters.
name's
Like
not in the rafters at
it's
all,
all
and it's
good.
not gonna be either. So yeah, but
That's
I did
funny.
appreciate like that he like went out of his way to like be like, hey, like I kind of want to take your number. Like that meant a lot to me. Obviously, like, I'm not this big time guy or whatever, but
Yeah,
just the
yeah,
fact that
yeah.
he wanted to reach out like that, I thought that was pretty cool.
That just
And
man,
then it also
just means guys got manners, man.
well, manners and like a little bit of respect for the program, the history, to reach out like that, which is
Totally.
what I love so much about the culture that Coach Mack has built since his tenure there. Like guys really care about the guys who were there previous to them, guys who are coming up after, like even you and I, like you mentioned Josiah, like
Right.
this is a kid that we've known for how long, and it comes full circle that he's a committed recruit who's going to be in a Blue Jay uniform next season. So
Right.
that kind of matters when you talk about building a program, building a culture, and still being in tune all these years down the line after obviously we've graduated a long time ago. So
Yeah,
yeah, it's
I'm
pretty
with
cool to
you.
still have that foundation for sure. But yeah, I was like, bro, take the number, bro. Like, yeah, I'm not gonna say no. Yeah,
It's not that deep.
it's not that deep at
Yeah.
all. Man, all right, we definitely got to talk about this because God, it's been such a roller coaster of a season so far for the Jays, who are sitting
hmm
at 9-8 right now, all at 500 in Big East play. Most recently, they lost to Xavier a couple of nights ago. We were supposed to record this last night. I'm just gonna come out and say it was my technical difficulty, which is why this podcast is coming a little bit later than scheduled. Yeah, well, thank God I have a producer because if I had to do this all by myself, then guys, none of this stuff would get done.
Right.
But
I'm the
the
same way.
Jays, yeah, that technology stuff, man, I feel like we're getting really old because I'm can't even figure it out anymore.
I know. I'm with you, man. I'm with you.
The Jays lose back-to-back Big East road games against two top 25 teams in UConn and Xavier. Obviously, most notably, or most recently, I should say, to Xavier 90-87. An absolute shootout of a game. The 91 points that were scored at half were the most in Big East play this year. All 5 starters for the Jays in double figures. Baylor, Shireman scoring a season high 25. bench points, only 3 of them for the Jays, however, and that's something that they've really struggled all year long. And obviously, we saw how the offensive rebounds that Xavier were able to get down the stretch really turned the tide and really secured that game for them. Although the boys never gave up, they ended up losing to a tough Xavier team on the road. That's a little bit of a recap there, Ross. I kind of want to know your initial reaction having watched the game and just kind of seeing how things went down the stretch.
Yeah, I mean, I think it's kind of important to remember context. I mean, obviously, I don't think anybody would have envisioned that this team would be 9-8 at this point, but it is important, like context. I mean, they've had one. This is one of the hardest schedules that they've played through 15, well, I guess 17 games now, since Mac has been here, and so you play UConn and Xavier back to back on the road, and Mac even mentioned it today. I went to a Creighton luncheon today, and they play very, very different styles. I mean, Xavier wants to get out and they want to run, and we also want to get out and run. So it's not like both of those teams. It's not like Creighton's incapable defensively. They are very much capable defensively, but there's a lot of possessions in that game against Xavier, and so it's obviously Xavier made some plays down the stretch, and a great little effort there at the end. It was 84-79, and it gets to and then I think, or it was 86-79, excuse me, and then we scored 5 straight, forced a turnover. Trey forced a turnover off a boom. We get kind of an inbounds pass and run a set play for Baylor, and he gets into the paint and pump fakes a couple times, ends up losing the ball. Just kind of made a cookie crumbles, I suppose, at the end, but yeah, we're in a get right spot here. I think at home against obviously Providence is very, very good, but I'm confident in this team at home, and they are gelling. I think that they're kind of coming together at a good time. They've had a little bit of a stretch here that's been very, very difficult. Obviously, it's been well documented with the caulk stuff and the mono, and I'm not giving up on this team at all. I still think they're very, very talented. They're very, very capable of making a run, and just got to shut the Xavier door behind you and focus on Providence.
I was a big fan of the play call that Mac drew up to get Baylor the ball in that situation. He had the entire middle of the court to himself. He was able to put a couple of moves on, get into the paint, 2 foot jump stop, which is kind of his forte. You're right. An unfortunate bounce or sequence of events where he just kind of loses the ball. Really didn't
Yeah,
really look. Initially I was like, oh, like as a Jays fan, as a very biased Jays, I was like, he got fouled. Call it, send him to the line. But like when
right.
you look at the replay, it's very clean defensive play. He just kind of loses the ball, and before you know it, that's game right there. And then obviously, you know, uh, long touchdown pass at the end gets deflected. That's kind of how the game ends in a very anticlimactic way when the Jays really dig big and deep and really fought back into that game, like you mentioned, like down 6 with not a lot of time left, were able to do all the right things in order to give themselves a chance. You give the ball to the guy who's had the hot hand on that, and it just kind of doesn't work.
And
So
that final play too, Jay. Like I think you got to give Colby Jones credit. Like he really stood his ground and got his chest into Baylor and kept his hands high. He made it difficult. I mean, he's not some Colby Jones isn't some 6 foot little guard that Baylor could have just had his way with. I mean, he made it difficult on him. Baylor kind of lost the ball a little bit on his own, but I think Colby Jones's length and his physicality, I mean, made it a little bit difficult there too. Because I agree, I like the play call for Mac. Get Baylor kind of coming off that little kind of double Iverson, kind of hybrid Iverson type action, and get to his left hand and try and get to the rim. I thought maybe Baylor could have caught it and taken one hard dribble and just gotten to the rim that way instead of trying to kind of back him down into the paint. But it is what it is, and unfortunately, they don't walk away with the victory. They had many chances, but you got to turn the page.
as tough as it was for Baylor to lose the ball in that situation, he did have the best game in a Blue Jay uniform so far for him. He comes in as a transfer who's known for letting it fly, scoring the ball a ton, being really smart offensively. But, with this collective of talent around him, he's kind of, it seems from the guy that I've seen this summer, like training and working out with the boys, that he's kind of holding himself back a little bit just so that he can better fit in with the group, kind of see where he needs to be in order to help the team achieve their goals. It was great to see him kind of let loose a little bit. and score from all three levels. The 3-point was falling, the mid range, which he hasn't really shot a ton this season, was falling, and then obviously he has the size and the length when he gets down there to pump fake you a couple times, get around the basket and score. How encouraging is it for Jays fans to see Baylor kind of come into his own offensively in that particular game, and what does that say about the prospects of him being able to do that as the season carries on?
Yeah, I mean it's huge to see that scoring aspect. I mean, obviously it's pretty apparent, the first couple of games of the season, just watching him, his rebounding ability and his ability to see the floor and his length and all those sorts of things. So, sorry, my uncle was. I'm in the office. My
No,
uncle was.
I,
My uncle
I
was trying to
already
get
know it.
me.
I already know exactly
Yeah,
where you're at, brother. Go
yeah.
ahead.
So, I think the world of Baylor's game. I mean, I've talked to Coach Vanderloo about this before the season, and I went to a practice, and I'm like, man, this kid, he's got size, and he sees the floor. He just has his IQ just seems to be 1 to 2 steps ahead of everybody on the floor. But yeah, you're right. I mean, it's good. He's been very, very streaky shooting the basketball. It's just, I mean, it's called spade a spade. He has, and so it's if he can really get into a rhythm here, a game like the other night against Xavier where he's 4 for 7 from the 3-point line, scores 25 points. If that's the kind of the impetus for him to really start feeling some confidence, especially behind the 3-point line, I think this team could be really dangerous for the next couple of months.
I like too that, sometimes he takes those logo threes a little too much for my personal liking. For being such a good shooter, he got going the other night by making 2 corner threes, the shortest three that there is on the court. He got two of them to
Mm-hmm.
fall early. Before you know it, he does get a logo three that goes down, and the it's Niagara Falls after that. Like the water just keeps flowing after that. But I've seen him kind of just. It feels like it's a settle. I know he can make those shots, and we had Mitch Ballack not too recently in a Jays uniform making a ton of shots like that too. So both of them being lefties, you can kind of see the similarities of like the prototypical long distance shooter that Coach Mack has been looking to
Right.
get these past couple of years. But at the same time, I would just be like, damn, Baylor, like get your feet on the line a little bit more, like make that shot slightly easier for you. And then
Yep.
once you get going, those deep ones will fall as well.
Yeah, and I'm of the opinion with the deep ones, like I take a little bit of a different stance on it. Like obviously, you think about like guys that have played in the program for a while that have the ability to shoot deep 3-pointers. Okay, so Ethan's kind of the first one.
Right.
Obviously Doug had that ability to. Mitch Ballack, Marcus Foster would take some deep ones, and then Baylor's of the same ilk. But of those guys, the only one I think Ethan was maybe a tad higher, but those other guys have been pretty darn streaky taking those deep threes, and they're just not super high percentage shots. I understand that they're capable of making them. I'm just kind of the opinion, like unless you're Steph Curry or Dame Lillard or one of those types of guys, like I don't think that they're
that
great
rare
shots.
breed of guys.
Yeah, I don't think they're great shots for really anybody, unless you're like
Hmm.
those two and like a handful of other guys in the NBA. They're just not high
Hmm.
percentage shots. That doesn't mean you're not capable of making them from time to time, and you are. Like we have seen Baylor make some of those, but to your point, I mean there are some where he's taken a couple of deep ones and kind of in transition too, where you're like, man, I just I think we should maybe be a little bit more patient here or
Yeah.
try and get a better shot. Like my thing too is, if you look at, Baylor, I know this isn't necessarily his game. He's always been more of a shooter and a kind of a distributor, but he's taken the least free throw attempts of any of the starters. I would
Hmm.
like to see a guy like him, especially maybe early in the game, establish himself and try and get to the free throw line. Because to your point, once you see a couple of fall, and he had a couple fall from the corner, you see a couple fall from the free throw line, and you're going to get that get that image in your head, and you can kind of build some confidence from there, if that makes sense.
No, that definitely makes sense too, and that's another thing that I haven't thought about. And you're right. Like when he was at the line the other night, and I saw he was shooting 68, 69% from the free throw line, I was like, that can't be right. And I went to look it up, and yeah, it's just he hasn't been there a lot,
Yeah, he hasn't
So
been there. Yeah.
that free throw percentage looks a little skewed because he just simply hasn't had enough attempts. But he's a guy that should easily be an 80 to 85% free throw shooter if he's able to get there. It's
Right.
just a matter of whether or not he gets there. So I totally agree with you on that one. Moving on a little bit, Mac was asked about, the message that he has, that he gave to the team after that game in the post-game press conference. it's such a tough game. You see the boys battle the whole time. They were up a point going into half, and those games are kind of pick 'em games from two very talented teams. He kind of talked about, the focus and the alertness that it takes to win those types of close ball games on the road. Obviously, he mentioned a couple of true road games that they've had during the season, and they've basically all been against top 25 teams. And if you don't count the Marquette game, which they weren't top 25 yet, they certainly will be, coming up this upcoming week.
Oh, yeah.
So
Marquette's a top 15 team in the country.
right. I'm just saying as far as like the ranking was at the time
Right,
of the
right, right,
Jays played them, right? Yeah.
right.
So but my question to you, Ross, is, what's it going to take for the Jays to figure it out, these close games? Because they're going to come. It's such a tough Big East stretch. Like, we say it all the time, in any conference, there's no easy games because the teams have such familiarity. They know each other so well. The last
Right.
place team in the league could beat the first place team in the league on any given night. Like, you just never know. So what's it going to take for the Jays to win some of these close games down the stretch?
I think just a lot of it is just shooting variance. Like it's so much harder. Like if you look at percentages, obviously it's way harder to shoot on the road. So you're already kind of behind the eight ball there a little bit. I think some variance is just gonna come into play at some point. I mean, obviously these games on the road have been against very very good teams, and give credit to those teams that have played at home. They've made a lot of plays to afford themselves victory. I mean, it felt like to me this year feels a little bit different. I mean, do you remember the year before? So I guess when all those guys were pretty young, like Mitch and Tyshawn and them, they lost a ton of close
Zagorowski.
games. Yeah, Davion Mintz.
Yeah.
They lost tons and tons of close games. The year before they ended up winning or having a share of first in the Big East regular
Mhm.
season, but and they were just really shooting themselves in the foot. I mean, there was a lot of games where they made some really costly errors late, or they missed free throws late. I don't see that necessarily with this team. I just see a lot of just poor nights shooting the basketball, and this team has been a little bit streakier, I think, than we all envisioned they might have been shooting the basketball, and we're kind of back. Last year was a little bit different in the sense that the team was playing at a much slower pace than what we're
Right.
typically used to. This team's back to playing kind of that fast, get up and down the floor, let it fly type of pace that the program has kind of built itself on under Mac. And so there's been some maybe some growing pains from just a shooting capacity there. But I think they're starting to settle in. With the healthy caulk too, I just think things are going to take a turn for the better. Kind of this back half of Big East play. I mean, if you think about it, Jay, the three hardest games on the schedule of Big East season already are gone. They're out of the way. Okay, all right.
Right.
If you want to, nitpick a little bit, we still have to play at Providence. Okay, that some people might say that yeah, maybe they're the top team or top two, three teams in the league. Fair. Okay, we still got to play at Providence, but these other games are that's the hardest game left on the schedule. We got all these teams that we just lost to on the road. We play all of them at home, and this
Mhm.
team has been very very good at home so far. Sans the Nebraska loss, but
Nebraska. Yeah. Oh,
I
the
just
Nebraska game.
I don't know. I just think that this team, they've got the talent and they've got the ability to really make a run here late. I just am still really bullish on the team. I mean, if you look at all the metrics, like if you look at KenPom, they're top 20 and KenPom. They're here you want to hear a fascinating stat on KenPom. They
Let's
are
hear it.
the luck factor. So for those that might not, end up listening, you're not familiar with KenPom. KenPom's kind of like it's sort of become like the Bible a little bit as far as analytics and statistics and the college basketball game. Coaches watch it, players kind of watch it or are aware of it. Fans are very, very aware of it, and it's typically very accurate. It takes into a whole lot of things into effect as far as analytics are concerned, shots, defense, strength of schedule, all those sorts of things. So he has something called a luck factor. Okay, Creighton, there are 363 Division One teams. Creighton is 361st in luck factor this year.
Jeez.
So that would tell me that you're due, especially a team that's as talented as us, you're due for some positive momentum going forward. I just don't see it any other way. If it doesn't happen, I guess I'm the idiot in the room here, but just I don't know. I just see this team getting better and better.
Now, when you say luck factor, like the way that I understand it is just the ball has not bounced our way essentially for quite a bit of this season. And like you're saying, like it's about time that those, 50-50 balls just kind of go our way a little bit more. Is that kind of what that spectrum is talking about?
Yeah. It essentially takes into so almost put another way. So something similar. There's another service out there that a lot of coaches use and follow. It's called Shot Quality, and you can go online. It's called shotquality.com, and you look at the standings. And basically, this is another sort of analytics site that takes into effect the quality of the shots that you're getting. So, my understanding of it is that it uses different sensors and video to kind of understand what are the type of shots that you're getting against certain defenses. Are you getting open shots? Are you taking a lot of really hard, contested, difficult jump shots? Right. Okay. So
Mhm.
number one in shot quality, Purdue. Number two, Connecticut. Number three, Tennessee. Number four,
Yeah.
UCLA. Number five, Kansas. Six, Alabama. Seven, Creighton. Okay, so this would suggest that we're getting good shots. Okay,
Mhm.
we are getting good shots, and we're making life somewhat difficult for our opponents defensively, and we're forcing them into difficult shots. Okay, so like
Mhm.
for instance, if you go back and you watched film of our Arizona State game, they made some unbelievably
Yeah, that is
difficult
absolutely true.
contested
Yeah.
jump shots. Okay, and that's where we're talking about the shooting variance. Some like the luck has to bounce your way or at least turn at some point. I just don't see it not happening. I guess that's where I'm going with all of this is just I just don't see it turning. I just think we're too talented. We're doing the right things. The shot quality is there. I just see it turning at some point.
I kind of want to go back a little bit to something that you mentioned earlier was that we're now back to playing that style of offense that Coach Mack has been known for, which is like a little bit of a higher pace. I wouldn't want to say running gun necessarily, because it's a lot more, basketball structured than I think people give it credit to. But it is high pace. It's, kind of like a let it fly offense compared to what the team was last year, where it was really anchored by the defensive prowess of Kalkbrenner, where, the possessions were much lower. We didn't
Mm-hmm.
have guys who would just take the outlet by themselves, like Shireman, who could just grab the outlet and just go. Hawkins was more of a guy who would grab the rebound. I'm sorry, and look for a guy to outlet, and that would always slow the breakdown just enough for the
Yeah.
defensive transition to get back in time. But I feel like obviously being at 9-8, there's something still missing there. Like, are you with me in saying that, or my thought process? Maybe I should state it a little bit more clearly. Is that a little bit of a better focus on the defensive and limiting shot quality of guys is also going to help us on the offensive end, even though it might slow our pace down a little bit. I just feel like right now we're looking too much for like the quick hitters and not really, grinding a possession and getting the best shot possible in certain situations. Does that kind of fall in line with what you've seen out there, or what's your take
Yeah,
on that?
maybe a little bit. I mean, I think this crew, especially the main four kind of guards slash wings, are definitely tailor made to play an up and down style. So I think it suits
Mhm.
them. Where what's been a little bit interesting to kind of look at though is Big Calk. And now this is, again, context is important. Like the guy had mono for a few
Mhm.
weeks there, so he hasn't really been in like peak game shape really all season. Maybe outside of the first few games of the year, right?
Mhm.
And then maybe in Maui, and then kind of it seemed like I don't know when exactly he started feeling sick, but
That third game in Maui, I feel like was the beginning of the decline a little bit, and then obviously we saw the Nebraska game when he came back, and then he missed a few games where Fred King kind of stepped up to
yeah.
the occasion there. But yeah.
Well, my point was maybe the only thing that I could potentially see with the fast pace is Kalk. Is Kalk built for that from a stamina standpoint and a strength standpoint? But again, I still think the jury might even be out on that, and that's almost unfair to talk about that a little bit because Kalk has been sick. So it's interesting. I think sometimes, the shots, you have a tendency when you play as fast as we play, maybe sometimes the shot quality and transition sometimes isn't there. But the flip side of that is like, who's to say if you slow it down that you're going to get a great shot too? I mean,
Right.
again, I don't want to
Well,
make this
it
whole thing
also
about
kind of
like,
goes. Sorry to interrupt you. It just kind of goes back to what you're talking about shot quality too, like the fact that we're seventh on that list. We're still getting pretty good shots, right? Like,
right,
but I don't know. I just feel like there should be a little bit more of a balance there, uh, where it might just be more of a mindset switch. You know what I mean? Where like they really have to be like, okay, like if we want to be a team that flies it up, we have to hunker down on defense
right.
and get
I
the
get what you're
stops that
saying.
we need to be able to run.
Totally. I get what you're saying. I get what you're saying. And I don't mean to make I don't mean to make the entire pod about like just shooting and like we've just had
Mhm.
poor shooting games in our
Yeah,
losses. But like because at some point it's like, okay, well, if you keep shooting poorly in losses, then maybe you're just a poor shooting
poor
team.
shooter. Yeah.
But but I don't think that's the case with this team. And this team has
Uh-huh.
shown that they're very capable of it. So they've been very streaky through 17 games. So you look back at some of these box scores, Jay. Okay, they lose by 5 at Texas. Had a chance late to make things really really interesting at Texas in a crazy
Mhm.
atmosphere. They're 4 of 27 from the 3 point line. Not going to win a ton of games. Going 4 of 27 from the 3 point line. Okay. Then we go to the Nebraska game. They lose at home to Nebraska. Nebraska played very well, in fairness. 10 of 40 from the 3 point line. Okay,
Oof.
that's that's a high number. Shooting 43s and
That's a
only making 10 of
43s
them.
in a game. Holy. Okay,
Okay,
carry
so
on.
let's go at Marquette. Okay, 4 of 20 from the 3 point line. Let's go to UConn. 2 of 16 from the 3 point line. Okay, Arizona State shot a little better. 11 of 27 from the 3 point line. Remember, that's the game where Arizona State made some very, very difficult shots. So,
Yeah.
then the other night it's a very high pace, very, very high pace game, and the team shoots pretty well from three to go 10 of 23. But I don't know. I just feel like I just again this team's 9-8, but they could easily be 12-5 if the cookie crumbles another way with shooting the basketball. And that's just sometimes like we talk about the game so much and like all these different like aspects of the game, and it can be
Mhm.
it's very complex in some manners, but it's also like very very simple and in other
Make or
terms.
miss
Like
league.
it's just like
Yeah.
exact hit or miss league. Like sometimes it's just about making shots, man. That's just really all it is.
Well, to your point, even Coach Miller from Xavier, agreed with you. He was stressing how much the Jays are so much better than what their record shows when he was asked about the challenges of preparing against the boys. And the Jays have struggled this so far this year, but like you said, like no team is really gonna want to see the Jays down the stretch if they round into form the way that we expect them to be able to, the way that obviously in the preseason rankings and stuff like that, the entire nation expected them to round into form the way that they're
Right. Right.
capable of doing so. But again, like with such up and downs, with win six, lose six, so win three, lose two, and then win one, lose three, whatever stretch that they've been on. What gives Jay fans confidence that they'll be able to turn this around? And we're not making it any easier ourselves. We got a tough Providence team coming into the CHI on Saturday. What confidence can the Jays fans have to know that this is a moment in time that the Jays could really right this ship and turn this thing around?
A couple of great question. I think a couple of things. For starters, the the starting
The
lineup
starters, yeah.
is is really talented, and I
Mhm.
mean really talented. All of
You,
those
you and
guys.
I were texting about that during the game too. I wanted to dig into it with that a little bit more a little later on, but I feel like you're about to go into it right now. So let's hear what you got to say about this.
They're just like you need to make deep runs in the NCAA tournament.
Mhm.
Um, you need really good guards, which we have, and you need um, for the most part, you need at least an above average big, and we have a
Which we
really
definitely
good big
have. Yeah.
in my opinion. So, the one critique of us at this point, I think, would be maybe the lack of bench production. But quite honestly, like once you get into like deep March runs, Sweet 16, Elite Eight, Final Four, like a lot of those teams aren't playing 9 guys. They're just
Mhm.
not. Like their bench is really, really, really short, and you're playing your horses. So
Unless
we
you're the
have,
2016 Kentucky Wildcats when they have
yeah,
those
we
two
we
separate
have like
lineups.
for Jays fans that are trying to see any positives going forward and have been frustrated with the record to this point, I understand, but like I promise you, we have the horses to make a run. We do. And the other component of that is like the NCAA tournament's a little bit different. For the most part, the top teams typically perform well in March. Okay. But there is a semblance of there are teams that get hot in March because it's winter, you're out. Like the best way I can explain it, obviously, Jay, you get this. Like the best team in the NBA wins every single year because you have to win. You have to win 4 out of 7 games 4 straight times. Yeah. Okay. So the best team's always going to win.
Okay? Listen, for people who haven't been a part of like a playoff series, I'm telling you the difference between a March Madness type situation or a best out of 5, best out of 7, to face the same team 7 times and to come on top it's an incredible feat. Like I don't think we give it like NBA players, sorry, NHL, like those leagues, MLB, those leagues where it's a best of 7 series. Like it's really tough to beat those teams because they know you so well. They know everything that you're gonna do. People always complain about the NBA about like, oh, why don't the players seem to care as much in the regular season? Well, it's totally different. That's 82 games. You're traveling. You're playing back-to-back. When you have a chance to sit down and scout the same team for 7 games, no wonder the game's more physical. You know exactly 100%. Where that guy's gonna cut and all the stuff that he's gonna do. So yeah, I totally agree with you there.
The point I was making with that is once you get to March and the NCAA tournament, it's just it's win or go home. So it just that entire format, it just lends itself to like if you can just get hot and kind of gel and peak at the right time, if you have the horses, you can go on a run, and we do. So that's why I'm a perfect. We could not have a more perfect example than last year with North Carolina. They were in the 8-9 game against Marquette. They make the national title game. They're up big in the national title game. I mean, that was a team that was in the 8-9 game that wasn't really ranked all year. That at certain points, people were saying, I mean, should they even really be in the tournament? What's their resume look like? What wins do they have? That's what people were saying at certain points last year about that North Carolina team. And then, fast forward a couple of months, and they're literally like 10 minutes away from potentially winning a national title. Okay, so we've seen it with we saw it with UConn back when they had Shabazz Napier. They won the national title. That team was like
Kemba Walker 4 years before that too.
And before that, I think the Shabazz Napier team, I have to go back and look. I think they were a 6 or a 7 seed. Okay, so for the most part, the top teams do.
I'm trying to think because small world type of situation. I played against Shabazz Napier in AAU. He's an East Coast kid. I'm Canada. We used to always go down to those AAU tournaments in like upstate New York and stuff like that. So I met Shabazz when he was like 13, absolutely cooking 15-year-olds. So when I saw him at UConn doing what he was doing, I was like, golly, like I always knew this kid was going to be so good.
Is he still playing overseas anywhere?
Yeah, he's overseas right now. I want to say he's in the Asian market because he's definitely not in Europe right now. But I mean, no matter where he is, I know he's making that money though. I already know that. But no, I think they were a 8 seed because I feel like it was like that Kentucky. It was UConn, Kentucky when Kentucky wasn't that good that year either. But they managed to make it to that finals, right? And Shabazz Napier knocked them off.
Yeah, it would have been 20. I think it was 2012.
7 seed is what our producer Josh is saying in our chat in the background. So I'm telling you guys, you need a producer to do stuff like that. Because Lord knows, see, Ross and I are still over here like Googling, trying to figure it out. Shout out Josh in the background, making things happen. But and if I'm not mistaken, that Kemba Walker with a freshman Shabazz Napier.
They were like a 4 seed maybe. Yeah. So
like
that was my
I'm
whole
just talking about getting hot at the right time. Like that's what
that was my whole point is like there's still positives to take away. Obviously, you have to do the work to get there. Okay. I'm not just saying, this team can just I'm not saying this team has the luxury of going 500 from here and just showing up in March. They don't have that luxury, unfortunately, anymore. They've already got 8 losses. Like you have to do the work to get there first, which I think they're capable of. But the positives to take away is that this team starting 5 is very, very talented. And if it gels at the right time and you get some shooting variance, to go your way, which I think they're capable of, they're a lot of goals for this season are still very much intact.
Well, you talked about their starting five for sure, but like you said, this is a winner go home situation. Let's just say we get to March, we do all the things that we're talking about, and one of our starters gets 3 fouls in the first 12 minutes. And the lack of bench production, which is what we've been kind of lamenting about all year long, now it rears its ugly head, and it's just kind of like, who can we trust? Who can we throw out there with the other four guys, maybe with the other three guys who are used to starting, to be able to keep a situation afloat so that we don't just go straight downhill as soon as one of those situations occurs. So
Yeah.
that is why I feel like Jays fans, and rightfully so, have been kind of lamenting about the lack of bench production. We had Toby Hegner on this podcast a couple of weeks ago, who he was a big time proponent of, like, these guys are playing too many minutes. We need to trust the bench more. We need to see what they can do. We need to, give them the confidence to go out there and score 4, 5, 6 points each, and have our bench scoring be 12 points as opposed to just 3. So I think that is where, like, that idea stems from, and I
No, I
see
get that, but
that.
Jay, but the thing is that's easier said than done now, especially
Mhm.
now that we're in a Big East play. Like, you really develop your bench, and Mac has said this, like, you really develop your bench in non-conference, and we had a very difficult non-conference, so
Right.
it was even harder for us to develop the bench, and like, you just don't have the luxury. I guess once you get into conference play, I don't know that you have the luxury of letting bench guys, play through numerous mistakes. Okay,
Mistakes. Yeah.
especially when you've got a really talented starting five. So it's a really fine balance. I think that's where it's really really difficult as a head coach, to sort of balance that, because those bench guys, to be a good player too, you've got to believe that you're a really good player. Those bench guys think that they're really good players, and think
Yeah.
they should be on the floor, right? But you got to prove it in your limited minutes, which Jay, this from playing professionally for so long. It's really hard to go in and you've only got X number of minutes, but to hit shots and prove that you're like a guy that should be out there is really difficult to do.
Yeah.
So it's just a really hard balance as far as that's concerned.
I've always said, like, for guys who've come off the bench, and like you said, like, I started my career on the bench as a Blue Jay, worked my way up to the starting lineup. In my professional career, I've been starting, I've been coming off the bench. For the guys coming off the bench, I always want to say, like, you have to force the coaches to keep you in there. Like, that is what your job is supposed to be. So if you go and you're out there and it basically looks like you're doing cardio for a bit, then the coaches aren't inclined to just keep you in for the
Right.
sake of keeping you
Right.
in. You got to take a charge. You got to dive for a loose ball. You got to hit a corner three. You got to do something where the coaching staff looks at you and they see that fire in your eyes. Like, okay, we can't take this kid out yet because,
Yep.
in the 2.5 minutes that he's been on, he's made 2 or 3 plays that, that brings positive outcome to the team. So it is a tough situation, and I totally understand what you mean. I guess we'll just kind of have to, wait and see how it all plays out, because we still have a ton of basketball left to be played. My next question for you, Ross, obviously, is, we talked about how talented this team is. As much as we like to think that the players are able to tune a whole bunch of the outside noise out, we know that they're heard about how great they could be, a Sweet 16, Elite Eight, Final Four type team to start the year.
Yeah.
Now they sit in that locker room at 9 and 8. What do you think is going through the minds of the student athletes at this time, being in that locker room, knowing that, hey guys, like, we squandered a lot of these games early on. We need to really, step our foot on the gas and go as hard as we can until the rest of the season.
Yeah, it's a good question. And like, obviously it's a different generation, and they've got a lot more social media stuff to kind of deal with
Mhm.
these days than, like we did, for instance, back in the day. It was still kind of in its infant phases. And so there's just a lot more noise, kind of what you said. The one thing that I think those guys, outside of Baylor, who then ended up becoming an unbelievable player at South Dakota State, all those guys are very highly rated recruits. Those guys have
Mhm.
been playing at a high level against other top rated recruits for years now. Those guys believe that they're really good. Okay,
Yeah.
so that I don't think I don't think this is a group that's like, oh man, this is, gosh, now we can't
The
achieve any.
sky is falling.
Yeah, like that, they're not like that. They're not thinking like that. And I
Mhm.
think that that's obviously a very positive thing. Like, you have to have that sort of mentality that they have. Like I remember I was doing color for one of the games last year. I can't remember which one it was, and we interviewed Art after the game, Kaluma, And we asked him a few different questions. I just got this sense from him of like, this is what I do, man. I'm supposed to be out
Yeah.
here. I'm supposed to be grabbing 12 rebounds. I'm supposed to be scoring 20. I'm supposed to be dunking on dudes. Like who like he wasn't saying it how I'm saying it, obviously, but I'm
Of
just saying
course.
this is the sense that I got from him. It was like, I'm the guy. Like I'm supposed to be doing this. So
Mhm.
that's a really good thing, I think, to, going forward. I think that they're, Coach Mack and his staff are obviously so good at messaging and so good at staying positive, and they're not berating the guys, left, right, and side, up and down. And I think the message is going to continue to be positive.
Yeah, that is one thing that Coach Mack's been really good at throughout the years. Like I remember the year after I graduated, when they started off the year pretty good, they beat was Oklahoma at home, right? Ranked top 25, and then just kind
Right.
of like this
Yep.
team, they just started losing like these close games. Like they went Will Artino,
Yeah.
who's been, I guess, on the show a couple of times. When he talks about it, he's just like, dude, like we lost
That team
nine
lost a lot
games,
of
right?
close games. Yeah.
Yeah, they lost 9 games by like a combined score of like 12 points. It's like they just couldn't, the ball wouldn't fall their way in the end, near the end of the games. And one of the stories that came out that year was Coach Mack being in a meeting with the rest of the coaching staff and being like, hey, we're gonna go to the practice court and we're gonna speak only positive to these guys because they hear it from everyone right now. They're hearing it from their
Mm-hmm.
teachers, their fellow students
Yeah.
in the classroom, their parents, their friends back home. They're hearing it from everybody about how awful things are going right now. We're not going to add on to that. We're going to flip this and to turn this into as positive a message as we possibly can. And I
And
feel
that
like that
wears
was a
on
big
you.
time. Exactly, it certainly does. But as far as like Coach Mack and his philosophy about, because I remember the Coach Mack where if we lose a game or whatever, like not that he would absolutely destroy us the next day, but he made his point. He drove his point across as far as like how much tougher of a team that we needed to be in those
Right.
types of losses. So I think that was a really big time step for Coach Mack individually as a coach and as a person, where he kind of realized like, okay, I need to maybe change my approach of how to deal with losses, especially close losses, because like you said, it's not like the guys gave up when they were down 6 with a minute left. They were fighting, 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 and at the end had a chance to tie it, gave the ball to the best player of that day, and he just loses the ball in the middle of the paint. But that doesn't mean that the effort wasn't there, that the guys weren't really trying their best to make sure that the win is the outcome. So I really appreciate that about Coach Mack and his staff, about just the switch that he's had over the years of being able to relate more to this current generation, which it is also my humble opinion that you can't treat kids the way that you did 10 years ago, that you did way that you did 20 years ago. Like
Well,
generations change,
completely
people
agree.
change, and you just have to deal with those circumstances and be the best possible coach that you can be. From all the things that I said, do you have anything more to add to that?
No, I agree, man. I'm like, yeah, completely in that camp. I mean, this is it's a different generation. Like these kids are, they're Gen Z. They're different. They grew up with social media. Like, then we haven't even talked about the aspect of, now NIL is involved and these kids are making money.
Yeah.
And so you got a whole host of other things kind of happening, and it's just there's a lot of things to juggle. And then you add on top of that they're really young. They're 19, 20, 21-year-old kids. Like
We
you,
forget that.
once you get to our age, you kind of realize, like looking back, you're like, oh my god,
Mhm.
how ridiculously immature was I, or
Man.
how flawed was my thinking about this, and this. And so, yeah, like those guys are going through all of those same things too, and it's really hard, especially, let's say for the bench. Let's take an example for the bench guys. I've always said this: like, if you're on the bench, you're a 19, 20-year-old kid, and you're on the bench, and you're just playing a role, and you're trying to find your footing. Like, how difficult is that? You were just a star on your high school team. You were a
Mhm.
star on your AAU team. You were getting recruited by all these different programs, and now you're kind of trying to find your way with like just a few minutes a game. So there's just a whole lot of things you got to juggle. And I agree with you. I think Mac and his staff do such a good job of that. Like if you've never been to a practice, they are so well run. They are so
Mhm.
efficient. The messaging is so good, and they just do an unbelievable job of just kind of building camaraderie and building a positive kind of globe around all the guys.
I think that's the thing that I need to be better at realizing too, is that they are 18, 19, 20-year-old kids out there, like for real, for real. Like And like you said, like I thought I was a grown ass man at that time. Like I thought I had everything figured out. When
You're
you look
not.
back on it,
We're
you're just
not.
like, I cannot believe that I didn't,
It's
get in
insane.
trouble or, find a way to get kicked off campus when I
It's
was like
crazy.
so young. Like there's just so much going on. Like obviously basketball is the main focus, but it's just there's so many different ways where you could just catch yourself being like in a bad place at the bad time or whatever the case may be because you are immature, because you don't know any better. And like I said, when you look back on it, you're just like, damn, like I'm grateful that I was in the straight and narrow during that time because
Yeah.
things got really south for me there for a second. But
No, I
yeah,
agree.
man, it's tough. And I think it is a good thing that you mentioned that. Like I personally need to do a better job of realizing, the stage of life that these guys are in too. There's so much more than just basketball, obviously, but this being a basketball show and the Jays being such a popular team in the state of Nebraska, obviously in the city of Omaha.
Hmm.
And, we've garnered fans kind of all over the place with our success in these last recent years. So um, that becomes the main focus. But we also need to realize that, there are growing pains to this too. Like none of this, no one said it's going to be easy. If it was going to be easy, everybody would be able to do it.
Yeah, it
And
was.
that's
It was. It
for us
was
to
never
do.
going to be. I mean, kind of to your point earlier about like the expectations. What the guys are thinking because they heard all the expectations at the beginning of the year. Like it was never going to be this. We look up and we're 16-1. Like it was never going to be like that. I mean,
Yeah.
I would have been stunned had that been the case and we were ranked second or first or third or whatever in the country right now. I mean, we got up as high as seventh, and we start off 6-0. We have that great win against Arkansas, and I'm like, man, they might
Yeah.
actually be the real deal here. But
Exactly.
I think this is. I don't want to sound like I get this all the time that I'm a homer or whatever, but
Oh, hey, look, we say this is the most biased Creighton podcast in the history. So
all right,
you
good.
can be a homer right here. Let's hear it.
But I'm just saying, like, I think this is good what they've gone through. I truly believe that. And maybe is there a possibility that in a month, things have not gone according to plan, and that this wasn't actually a good thing for them to go through, and that this was just a part of a bigger problem. Uh, there's certainly a chance of that, but I just don't think that's the case. I think that these difficulties that they've had for the past month or so are going to end up being a good thing at the end of the year. I know that sounds crazy, whatever, but I just have that feeling.
Well, Ross, I certainly appreciate you taking a little bit of time to talk a little Jays basketball with me on this fine Friday afternoon. We got the Providence game at home tomorrow, and hopefully we'll be able to get this out to you guys before that game. Again, if we don't, that's all my fault because of the technical issues that we had to deal with yesterday.
I got
But
faith in you, Jay. You'll get it out.
man, but I appreciate you. Obviously, like this is our second attempt at this, but I
Are you
appreciate you
going to get to
taking
watch
time
the game
out.
tomorrow?
No, I won't be. So I'll be dealing with, the Austrian Cup that we have coming up tomorrow and
Oh, nice.
Sunday. We're in the semis and the finals of that. So that'll be my focus. I'll be able to watch it on Synergy the day after, but I won't be able to watch it live like I normally do, which kind of sucks because it's an afternoon game. And these
Yeah.
are like the games that are actually at a
But
reasonable time for me
yeah,
here
yeah,
instead
yeah.
of me
Right,
staying up until
right.
2:30 in the morning. But yeah, it won't work out. And but I'll be able to catch it eventually on that Synergy app, which has been so that's been a blessing for me for all the games that I've been able to miss, or if I want to go back and rewatch like a half here or there and just kind of get my bearings about me as I obviously prep for a show like this. But is
Right.
there any last words that you want to say to Blue Jay Nation and Jays fans everywhere?
No, I think just like stick like kind of what the theme of our whole conversation has been. Like just kind of stick with the team. Like
Mhm.
I promise you, this team is talented enough to still do some damage come the end of the season. Now, again, they have to do the work to get there, but I believe that they will. I believe they're to talented enough to really make things happen late. I'm excited for the rest of the year. I'm excited that our three hardest games, arguably, and Big East are done with already.
Yep.
And tomorrow will be fun. Providence is Ed Cooley's done an unbelievable job there, man. I mean, he's really
Yeah.
got that thing going now, and they play a great brand. Tough kids and talented, and it's going to be fun.
As much as I've always hated going up against Providence, like Cooley is one of the guys that's super highly respected in the league, and I see why, having
Yes.
met him, talked to him a couple of times. Like he's just one of those guys that you just want to root for. It's
Yeah.
just you can't root for him because he
He,
coaches
yeah.
Providence.
He's just a guy. He's a guy that like gets it. You know what I'm saying?
Yeah,
Like
absolutely.
he can talk to anybody. He can BS with anybody. He's just kind of
Mhm.
one of those guys. He's just got that like charisma about him. Like
Yeah,
if you were to meet him and sit down with him for 15 minutes, you'd be like, all right, I understand why like young good players want to go play for him.
right. Yeah, no, I totally agree with that statement right there. You and I got to get back out on the golf course, brother. We definitely need to link
I
up
know,
this
man.
summer and make sure that that happens. That was a whole ton of fun this past
Yeah,
summer for sure.
we gotta do it again.
Yeah, absolutely. Make sure to like and subscribe to the Phillips 68 Media Network. I'm your host, Jahenns Manigat. This has been our 11th guest, right? Or 12th? 11th guest, Ross Ferrarini. Thank you so much, Ross, once again for stepping into the J with me virtually like we always do. We're going to definitely have you back on the show later on, just to kind of discuss, the J season once again. Until then, dude, stay safe out there. You know how it is. We'll stay in touch. And as always, go Jays.